Hello and welcome. Could you first start off by introducing yourself, who you are, what you do, what your background is, all that good stuff?
Sure. I'm Sue Smith, and I am the Vice President for the School of Advanced Manufacturing, Engineering, and Applied Science at Ivy Tech Community College. Ivy Tech is Indiana's community college system. It is the largest singly accredited system in the United States and the largest post-secondary system in Indiana. And so I've been here at the college for nearly 30 years, and I have worked in manufacturing and related fields in the school for all that time, worked with manufacturers and other employers a lot in agriculture and automotive. And really my role here is to ensure that our curriculum is aligned with what they need their employees to have. And so we do that in a number of ways. We do that with degree credit programs. Some of those actually transfer to Purdue and to other higher education institutions. And then we also do that with customized training and short micro-credential training. So our role really is to prepare the workforce for the future and then skill up the current workforce to be successful. So I come from industry, I come from manufacturing originally, and so was in manufacturing for several years, actually worked my way through college in a manufacturing company. So very familiar with the manufacturing sector.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think the skills gap is something that's maybe not talked about as much as it should be. You know, this idea that there's this huge gap between what industry needs as far as skilled workers go and what we actually have. So what kind of changes have you seen in what the manufacturing field needs in your time there?
So the manufacturing companies are looking for a lot of really high level skills because of, well, a couple of things. An increase in productivity is needed for staying competitive within the marketplace, but that has to come with an increase in technology. And so that increase in technology, particularly to the digital manufacturing level or smart manufacturing level or industry 4.0 or however you want to couch it or phrase it, that has caused an even wider skills gap because now they need even higher level employees and folks that are flexible and adaptable and can learn and be skilled up because that technology is always going to increase. But as it increases, we need folks that have, quite honestly, that have the ability to learn things like Fusion and, to really use those tools that are out there to be innovative and to really be able to grasp new technologies as they come to make industry more productive and increase efficiencies.
So would you say that technology is almost running faster than we can educate people to use it? Is that part of the problem?
Absolutely. It's running faster than two things. It's running faster than we can recruit folks into it, and it's running faster than we can educate folks for it. But but it's a start, and we have to start somewhere. And I think recruiting the talent that we need is key because that talent then can be skilled up to a level that manufacturers can use and other sectors can use.
So when you're looking to recruit people and bring people into the field, what character traits do you think serve people the most in STEM fields?
Well, in STEM fields in particular, the rate of change is very rapid. So we are experiencing so much technology, increases in technology in our STEM fields that you have to be adaptable. You have to be very flexible. The ability to learn, the capacity to learn, the desire to learn new technologies has to constantly be there. So I always tell students when they're entering our school in advanced manufacturing and engineering and applied science, this isn't this end of your education. This is not a terminal education. You will always be educated and being upgraded as long as you're in this field.
Right. And I feel like that gets kind of challenging though, because then you start, I think a lot of people, especially in COVID era, got really burned out on these jobs that you feel like you constantly have to evolve. So how can you sort of keep up with the times without feeling like you're just stuck in a rat race?
Yeah, that's a good point. And, we sort of all there's so much training at everyone's fingertips, really, literally,
Mhm. Yeah.
now, as we have so much online training, so much simulation training. It's all right there. And I think that avoiding burnout is kind of pacing yourself. I mean, you don't have to learn it all in one day. And then a combination of learning and then applying, and then learning and then applying, because we all know, and it's been proven over the years pedagogically, that folks learn best when they can have that hands-on experience to go along with their learning.
Yeah.
Not in all venues. I mean, of course, there's literature and things like that where that may not be the case, but when you can actually apply, what you've learned, that's a better learning experience. That's better retained. It's more useful for the employers. So I think that combination can help us avoid burnout a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And I think keeping it interesting as well and trying to like keep it entertaining for yourself, like it might be in school by doing projects and all of that can also be kind of helpful.
Sure.
Um, going back to sort of the workforce and who we're seeing recruitment, I think something that we just discussed in one of my previous interviews that came up, because it is such a big topic in academia right now, is this idea that we're seeing less and less men going into higher education and receiving degrees and more women. Have you noticed that change at all for Ivy Tech or for STEM fields in general, or has it been kind of consistent still?
I think from our perspective, the community college level here in Indiana, it has been consistent. We
Mhm.
still see folks going into the traditional fields. We're trying to change that. We're trying to change that in construction. We're trying to change that in manufacturing, of course, and welding and HVAC, and to recruit minorities and diverse populations. Excuse me. I think I talked to a colleague a couple days ago that said it best, and I can't say it any better than this. If we want to recruit folks into non-traditional fields, it might be best to train the folks who are currently in those jobs to be more accepting of people into those non-traditional fields. And so I think there's some merit there, quite honestly.
Mhm.
But I do think that, we continue to try to recruit into non-traditional fields,
Mhm.
minorities and uh, particularly women into some of those fields that are very male dominated.
Yeah. And what do you do? I think the idea of training people that are already in that field to be more accepting is something that we don't talk about as much. Where we do a lot of the time say it's like, oh, it's a numbers game, just get more women in, get more women in, and that doesn't really solve the problem. So how do you go about training people already in those fields to be more accepting?
Yeah, I think that what we have to do and what we are trying to do is to engage more employers.
Mhm.
Employers are increasingly needing talent across the state
Mhm.
in manufacturing, in agriculture, in construction, and helping those employers understand that, recruiting is just half the problem.
Right.
Retaining is the other half of the problem. And so, you spend all this money to recruit someone into a field, and then once they get there and get into your organization, they don't find it as welcoming, as it could be. And so I think helping employers understand and helping them engage in the solution to provide that training, to have that supportive culture within their organizations as we recruit more diverse populations.
Yeah. So it's on both ends. You have to like bring diverse people in, and then you have to explain to employers like, hey, you need to change your environment. Um, Sort of on the stream of employers and sort of employer expectations. Another thing that's come up a lot or become more of a popular conversation is this idea of employers, asking for 2 years of experience for entry level jobs and kind of these unrealistic expectations. From your end, do you see this as a problem, or is it sort of more something that's getting coverage that doesn't happen very often?
Yeah, so and I can speak to that a little more long term. So we've looked at this for a number of years now. You know, a number of years ago, we heard from our employer partners, they'd say things like, well, we're hiring your graduates, but they're still not ready to go to work. Well, why aren't they ready to go to work? Well, they don't understand, you know, how to get information. They don't understand how to work in teams. They don't understand, you know, how to work in teams to solve problems and all of these things. And so what they were really saying to us was they lack work experience, right? And so, so that's, you know, that's something that we tried to deal with through internships. And
Right.
I think that, you know, if in colleges folks aren't employed, but we have a large number of our students who are employed and go to school part-time, and that's just a community college thing. But if we don't have, you know, folks that are going to work part-time and school part-time, then we do provide those internships and those internships opportunities so that they can have that work experience for the 2 years that they're getting their degree.
Yeah. And Purdue has a couple of programs that also like you require you to get work experience to even graduate. So I think that's how we're kind of coping with it. But you know, people still, I think people get intimidated by this sort of list of expectations on a company's LinkedIn page. Like before you even apply, you have to do all of these things, and it's like, how am I
Right.
possibly supposed to get that experience?
Right. Yeah. And that's, you know, I understand what employers are saying, you know, and I think Purdue would agree with this as well. While we can simulate a lot of things and a lot of technologies, we cannot simulate standing there on the floor, whether it's in a manufacturing company or working in the field in an ag organization or, you know, whatever it is, we can't really simulate that. And
Right.
so that work experience is invaluable.
It's vital. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I see companies as well do that even after they've employed people. They'll have their engineers. I know of a company I just talked to recently, they'll have their engineers for an entire week go out on the shop floor during the midnight shift and work as like a machinist would, so that they can understand that side of it as well. So
Sure.
yeah, I think that sort of theme resonates through all of industry. It's like you really have to understand the environment. So I think another interesting topic when it comes to community colleges, there's this bias against community colleges and also technical colleges and stuff like that. Where do you think that kind of stems from, and sort of what light can you shed on the value of a community college?
Oh, wow. Well, that's really got a lot of historical context,
Hmm.
you know, over the years. I think that while I'm not blaming anyone for it, because I don't think there's blame to be had, I think it sort of originated with high school counselors who and even parents who,
Hmm.
you know, thought that community college was the second choice, with the first choice being a university.
Yeah.
If you don't get into university, you can always go to community college, right?
Right.
So I mean, and that's kind of how our advisors have always advised at the post-secondary level.
Hmm.
And of course, you can understand that because they're all, you know, university level educated for the
Right.
most part, I'm
Mhm.
guessing. So I, you know, so I think that there's that. And so I think changing that has, you know, has really been a challenge over the years. You know,
Mhm.
statistics have shown that people who have more education typically make more money. And
Mhm.
so the theory is the higher in education you go, the more money you'll make, right? I mean, if that stands to reason, then certainly you would think that. But actually, I can tell you that at the community college level, our programs in our workforce and careers side of the house are all designed with and aligned to employer actual careers. And so for example, the average salary right now in manufacturing in the state of Indiana is $80,000. And so that's a pretty good career for someone who has that 2-year degree, who's getting out and starting, understanding that that's the average. While they may not make the average, that's certainly a lot higher than all the other all the other careers in the state, or all the other sectors in the state. So we're really, we're really looking at that, and looking even at IT and some of those opportunities. But the STEM careers are really right now all the focus, because there's such a talent shortage in those areas. And we just, if it's biotech, no matter what it is, that the salaries are there, and they're in that very, very livable wage range.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I think that understanding also that while you may get a 2-year degree from a community college in a STEM field, you will not be able to stop there. You will always constantly need continuing education. You may want to further your degree to become a supervisor in that area, or become a scientist, or whatever it is. But to move on up, into engineering, or whatever you have interest in, that's great too. But you'll never stop learning in the STEM fields.
Yeah, I think that's what hopefully appeals to a lot of people in STEM, is that you can be a lifelong student, and you can succeed in being a lifelong student, because it's rapidly changing. And yeah, it's one of those cool things. That's a good point. Do you see education shifting away in the future? Can you see education shifting away from the standard 4-year university, considering it's so expensive now, so it's becoming more and more unobtainable for a lot of students?
I think in the short term, it will shift away.
Mm-hmm.
I think just from what we're seeing in the marketplace right now, community college enrollment across the country is dropping, in a lot of areas, not so much in the STEM fields, but certainly overall it's dropping. So I think folks are more and more understanding that community college, that 2-year degree, STEM level is really a valid pathway to a very good career. And that 2-year pathway, whether it's, whatever credentials you get along the way, that's not the end. So I think as universities more and more understand the value in those 2-year degrees, then it's not the end of their pathway. It's just the beginning of the pathway, even into a 4-year program, if that's what they want to do. So, I think creating those long-term pathways that students can see, if I do these things and get these credentials, then I can move up to this level and this level, and understanding that trajectory and progression is going to be critical. But I do see students looking more and more to starting out with those 2-year pathways.
Yeah, that's interesting. Or even alternative pathways. I know computer science has started to do computer science boot camps and things like that instead of a 4-year degree as sort of an alternative pathway. I had one. So brain fart. So you talked about how obviously Ivy Tech tries to orient your curriculum to what manufacturing fields and what industry is actually looking for students that are sort of operating on their own, or if they've graduated and they need to sort of keep evolving with the field. How do you recommend that students continue to learn on their own after their education, or even during their education, to supplement it?
Yeah, I think, again, there are so many resources at our fingertips now, and a lot of those are free resources.
Yep.
So there's a lot out there that we can take advantage of. But I think on a more structured approach, if, community colleges all over the country do a lot of continuing education, and I think that looking at, let's say you're in a current role or a current degree, so you're in a current company role, or you're in a current degree role or pathway, you look at that and you can see the new technologies that are coming. For example, right now, if you're in manufacturing, you know that you have all these automated systems, and you have all this automation and robots and all of those things that you're working with every day. But what you have to really recognize, and most folks in the field do, those systems are now going to be connected. And so that connectivity how does that happen? And you've got to be thinking, how do I get involved in that? How do I better understand that? And so then I think is when you look to community colleges for new degrees and new certifications and new credentials that can facilitate your understanding and promote your understanding of that. Innovation and design are another area, no matter what field you're in or what sector you're in, that innovation and design, those are going to be tools like computers and ink pens right now. You're going to have those have to have mastery of those tools. And I think, Autodesk, for example, is a good example of that. And, where you can learn just about anything and you can build just about anything using those tools. So I think those are things that you have to always be mindful of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's a good point. Free sponsorship here, or free advice. Autodesk has so many online resources, and a lot of, like you said, there's so much stuff you can just learn for free now, especially if you're a student, because Autodesk is free for students. We love it.
Right? Yeah.
just a little bit of a plug there. That's fine. How have you seen STEM education changing, especially sort of post-COVID era? Hopefully we can start moving towards saying that.
I think we learned a lot during COVID, and particularly at the community college level, where we have so many classes that are lab-based classes.
Yeah.
And as I said, the value of that hands-on learning is critical. And we did figure that out during COVID as well. Well, not figured out as much as have that reaffirmed. So our learners in usually our demographic are folks that do like hands-on tactile learning. They like that. That's what they want. That's how they best learn. That's how they best retain knowledge. And that's how they become experts. So I always use the analogy, we can teach someone to weld in just a one class, but we can't teach them to weld well.
Yes.
And so that's really what we've learned over the course of COVID, is that decrease in lab time that we experienced showed us and reaffirmed to us that we need to go back to that so students can learn well, and that they can become experts in their field and master the skills that need to be mastered in those topics. So I think that's what we learned most. I think that the trend now is much back toward, having online training as a supplement and having that lab training as the real significant portion of any class.
Yeah. No, well, and I'm in the Polytechnic Institute at Purdue, and like the same rules apply completely. It's like, how am I supposed to learn electronics without being in the lab accidentally blowing up capacitors? How else am I going to learn? Because a lot of us are the same sort of breed, right? Hands-on learners. So hopefully people do see like, hey, this is really worthwhile and this is worth the investment to put that technology into students' hands so they can actually use it. Yeah. So then sort of shifting again more towards building educational material. Do you do anything in particular to try to make your educational material or programs within the community college approachable for students with varying backgrounds, especially like minority groups who might not have gotten the same advantages as other groups coming in?
I think we do a lot of that kind of work in trying to help everyone start at a different level. So what we actually have is we have all of our classes, particularly in the industrial area, we use e-learning. And with that e-learning, it's sort of a way that you can get additional resources into the hands of everyone, very, without any intimidation. So it's all right there, right? So folks can access it. And we also have a whole team of advisors and career coaches whose job it is to ensure that those folks have all that they need. So in other words, if you come to an Ivy Tech and we have all this e-learning available and you've only worked in fast food, let's say, but you really understand that this manufacturing career is the way to go. But you've never worked in manufacturing. So the career coaches can help you in understanding how, you can get the resources you need to start educating yourself about the industry and in the industry. And so, if that's, well, I don't really use computers. I use my cell phone, right? Everybody has that, but I don't really use computers, and I've never really done that. So we can help you with that and help you to get, the wraparound services, if you will, that are needed to prepare folks to go into those careers. Because if you're going into a classroom where everybody in there has a computer, everybody's used a computer, everybody knows how to access the e-learning and all the modules, and you don't, that can be very intimidating.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have that. We also have, a lot of faculty who support our students. We have a lot of tutoring that's available both online and face-to-face. So, particularly in math and English, to help folks get through that. So I think there are lots of services out there, but I think those career coaches and those advisors play a key role, because, if you don't know where to get that stuff, then, you're kind of dead in the water there. So yeah,
for sure.
So I think that first touch with those advisors and career coaches is critical to our students.
Do you see that as sort of a recurring issue of students coming in and not understanding technology to the extent where they maybe should, or their sort of society expects them to understand it?
No, I think so. I think it's going to be a recurring issue, because I think as we look to recruit more and more diverse populations that we haven't really pulled into these STEM areas before, or they haven't felt that they could go into the STEM areas before. I think that's going to be critical to ensure that they feel comfortable in those programs.
Yeah. So what's one of the biggest challenges you see as far as STEM education going forward? What's one of the biggest inhibiting factors from that continuing to grow as a field?
I really think that that people are going to be one of the biggest factors. We're recruiting into the STEM areas. We know that we need a lot more and a lot more diverse populations in order to meet the needs that we have in the STEM areas, but so do other sectors. And so it's not just the STEM areas that are competing for talent. It's all sectors that are competing for talent. And I just read this morning that, there were 15,000 fewer folks on unemployment, which sounds great, but we don't have those folks in the marketplace. We don't have those folks in Indiana alone. Just in manufacturing, we have vacancies of 15,000 total right now. Right. About half of those, excuse me, are folks that need higher education for the jobs that they want to get. So, I think the biggest hurdle for us is going to be the amount of people that we have in STEM. And that's going to cause us to become even more technical.
Right.
So we're going to have to automate more. We're going to have to get better and better with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And that will happen. I mean, as we don't have enough bodies, production won't stop. It'll just become more automated.
Yeah. Well, and so I think a lot of people's fear about that, a lot of people are afraid of machine learning and AI because people don't really understand how it is or how it works and all of that. What would you say to people who are concerned about automation taking over human jobs?
I don't think that's happening. The companies that I've worked with over the years, and particularly in the last 5 years, that hasn't been their experience. So in other words, when they become more and more automated, it isn't that they have fewer jobs. It's that they have fewer mundane and repetitive jobs.
Right.
So, that's something to consider. And I think as we look at machine learning and AI more as tools, and it should become less threatening. So,
Right.
I don't think that we will ever have a situation where we won't have the need for people, even in the dark factories that we have now. There's still that need for people. It's just that automation, AI, and machine learning should make things easier.
Right. They're tools at the end of the day that make people's
tools.
lives easier. And I think the other point that is very valid that people have brought up is a lot of the times the jobs getting animated or automated are dangerous jobs that people tend to lose their lives on, either very quickly or slowly over time from exposure to very nasty things that OSHA would frown upon. So yeah, a lot of the time it's people not getting their jobs taken, it's people getting dangerous or repetitive soul-sucking jobs removed. And
right. Yep. And think of the artificial intelligence and e-learning that Amazon uses. It's so much easier now if I order something from Amazon and a month later I need that replenished, to go in and just hit a button and order it again than to try to search for it again, see all the different, different area or different, different types of things that they have. So I think that it does make our lives easier. And as you said, Andriana, it makes them safer.
Yeah. Going on the streak of naysayers, I think there's still a lot of resistance to prioritizing minorities for recruitment. Because I think some people debate that, then it's people getting put into jobs for things that are not their skill set. What would you say about, why we're recruiting minorities specifically for these jobs?
Well, I think not just minorities, but all non-traditional populations have really been ignored from a talent perspective. And whether that's been, just because traditionally we always had this other population. So if you look at nursing, for example, we've always seen pictures of nurses that were female, right? So first of all, males don't think they can do that, and they don't think they should do that. And I think that is an example of where things are rapidly changing.
Right.
And so, by getting an idea or a picture of how we can use these different populations and recruit these different populations to offset the talent needs in these industries and STEM industries, I think that's critical. And I think that the talent is there. So in other words, we don't know what untapped talent there is out there because we haven't tapped into it, right? So, one thing we found, and I don't think very many folks would disagree with this in my school, we found that females are awesome welders.
Yeah, they are. I'm a welder, so I can attest.
Yeah, they score higher on our welding, particularly on our virtual welding devices, and we go out to various schools and we bring all this equipment in and we put these different kids on welders, and even middle school and grade school kids, and the females outscore the males on these welders all the time. So I think we're missing a whole element of talent that we never really thought we could use.
Yeah. Right. Well, and for welding, because welding is my soft spot. So welding in particular, it's this hilarious field where it's not as physical of a job as most people think it is. So there isn't that like natural, you need some big strong guy. And yet, like, still to this day, I think only 7% of welders are female or something, some ridiculous statistic like that. This is a good point that, like, just because it's not the convention doesn't mean they're bad at it. That population is bad at it. It just means that nobody has tried really. And there's a lot of untapped talent there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. do you see people getting opportunities that maybe they shouldn't have because of their, sex or race or something like that, where maybe there was a better candidate, but the minority group got it because they were minority group? Or do you think that's not actually happening?
No, I don't know.
Mhm.
In education, I'm not in an area where I hire folks routinely every day,
Yeah.
like a manufacturing company would, or agricultural company or an automotive dealership. So I really don't know if that's
Mhm.
the case. If the metrics that we're seeing, required for different areas are forcing folks to hire from a minority or not from a minority. So I don't know. I don't know if that's happening. If it is, um, I'm not hearing that necessarily.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from employers is, I will take everyone you can bring to me as quickly as you can.
Right.
So I'm not hearing that. I think that where we need to look toward non-traditional populations in general is that we don't have enough traditional workers to fill the needs that we have. And
Mhm.
so I don't think we have a choice but to look to non-traditional populations.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, part of this need has, or part of this sort of like empty gap in a lot of industry has sort of occurred from, the great resignation and a lot of folks leaving their jobs, moving jobs, leaving slots open. Do you see that continuing of like this new generation that isn't going to stay in a company for more than 2 years, or do you think that's going to settle back into company loyalty, as people would call it?
I think it depends. I think if employers are able to really understand the demographics that they're serving and the traits of the demographics that they're serving or that they're employing, and in other words, serving, they're providing a space for them to work.
Mhm.
I think if we can, as employers, embrace those different demographics and those different generational differences, then I think we can create jobs that will support retention, or that we'll be able to retain folks into those jobs.
Mhm.
If we don't, then no. So I mean, I think it's really on the onus of the employers to
Mhm.
figure out what those different populations want and what they expect in a career and in a job, and we have to provide that. So in other
Right.
words, if they want to be, as we've seen in some of the generations, they want to be more involved in decisions.
Right.
They want to have more freedom, for example, in their job. They don't want to just sit and do the same mundane task, 8 to 5, 9 or 7:30 to 3. They want to have time for their children. They want to have, these other benefits. We've got to figure that out. And I'll give
Mhm.
you the example of Amazon, not a plug for Amazon, but I'm just saying, in their structure, they say, okay, come work for Amazon. We'll pay for your education, whatever you want to do. If you leave Amazon in 5 years, okay, I've had you for 5 years. And so I think those are the kinds of things that we have to really start looking at as employers and figure out. I think that this COVID situation has helped us understand that some folks want to work from home. Some folks want to be remote employees. And as employers, we have to figure out how to best utilize that. Now,
Mhm.
as a welder, no, probably not.
Not yet.
But yeah, but yet the technology could eventually be there where that could happen. So how do we prepare for that, and how do we recruit those populations? Meeting them where their expectations are is probably the only way to retain them.
Yeah. Right. I think, yeah, we're seeing that more and more as employers need to start, yeah, meeting people where they are and trying to make accommodations for people as much as possible, or else the power is in the employee now. And I think my generation and, the younger millennial generation and above really is more than willing to leave a job that just isn't serving them anymore, which is probably for the better.
Yeah.
It's neat. So sort of last overarching question here. What advice do you have just for students in general, people that are going into the workforce soon, for, how they can thrive in an education system that maybe wasn't built for them, how they can thrive in, potentially difficult jobs and all of that, and grow as a person along the way?
Well, as I tell students always, and I think I said it before, there is no such thing as a terminal education.
Mhm.
So even if you've just finished your doctorate degree, there is no such thing as a terminal education. Even as a physician, you will have to, or as a professor level doctorate, PhD, you will continue to have to go to school and learn different technologies as they are developed. Maybe you'll be developing those technologies, but you will continue to need to continue to learn. And so as you look for an employer, I would look for an employer who embraces that and who understands that and who doesn't expect that you come in and you do this task for a number of hours and then you leave. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that the students we're seeing today come into the education and into the workplace are not going to be satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the first thing, and be flexible and be willing to explore other opportunities. So in other words, maybe you start out in in manufacturing, working on the floor. Think about maybe working in purchasing, or maybe you want to go into, HR or something else. There are a plethora of jobs in every sector that you can go into. So be open and be flexible into exploring other parts of the company, other parts of the industry.
Yeah, awesome. Just be a lifelong learner, always and forever, and get a job that allows you to be a lifelong learner. It's
Right.
awesome. Cool.
And, and I would also suggest that, that you be very cognizant of social responsibility.
Mhm.
So, it's no longer just enough to be a good employee. Being a
Mhm.
good citizen is also critical. And I think that's really the beauty of the generations that we see upcoming, is they understand that and
Mhm.
they really embrace that. So I think that is exciting and something that they should keep doing.
Yeah, awesome. All right, that's all I got for you. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrea, and it's a pleasure to meet you.